Now that the April 2026 campaign for World of Warships Legends is almost over, I think it's high time we talk about the Tier 8 premium Spanish battleship Victoria again, because I've seen a lot of chatter around the community where people are claiming that this ship is not good, or in fact, that it's bad. That is something I disagree with. I don't think the ship is bad at all. In fact, I think it's kind of good. It's probably not the strongest battleship at the tier or the most competitive, but I also find it fun. And here you see, with this salvo against the mines, we start out with about 22,000 damage. I've got about 2 games here to show you. This first one is cut up quite a bit because we're going to do over 100,000 damage within the first 5 minutes and also get the high caliber. The second game has a lot more total damage done over the course of it, but I think both of them show the damage output of this ship. Mines is turning broadside here, as you can see, and I don't even think we need the ready rack to send him back to port. Just the first salvo does it. 30,000 against that guy in the span of a couple salvos. We've also got Victoria out here, enemy Victoria. And I think there is an Iowa on this flank too, but he's like behind the island or something. Victoria on the enemy team is taking some punishment from our teammates. We're going to try to see if we can add to that. Of course, we go dark, putting the island between ourselves and that Victoria. And I think for whatever reason, he makes the decision to start going broadside. And we might be a little bit quick on the shells there. I suppose we could use the reload booster. But you see, another couple citadels on him. All of a sudden, our damage total is more than doubled. We're at 70,000 now. Iowa's coming out behind, or from behind the corner as the enemy Victoria goes down. Guns are just about reloaded again, and I promise you this guy is not a paid actor despite appearances. He just did come out broadside for who knows what reason. Another couple citadels, 2 salvos, 1 salvo effectively. He's almost all the way back to port. 114,000 damage done. Keep in mind, this was just in a couple of minutes, shooting at 3 different targets. The damage output here, by all indications, does not seem bad to me. Not in any way. And I know why people are saying it seems bad. We'll get into the actual numbers, and we'll do a little bit of math here later on. I just wanted you to see the effect of these guns. Iowa still broadside trying to reverse, can't do it. He goes down for our second kill of the game. 122,000 damage done in less than 5 minutes. 10:01 left on the clock. We'll cut to a little bit later on in the battle because, as you can see, this is a blowout. There's only 2 destroyers, 1 battleship, and an aircraft carrier left on the red team. And I think both of those destroyers are in the center of the map. We've switched to HE, especially for them, so you can get a taste of the HE damage. As you can see, the accuracy may leave a little bit to be desired, but effectively every salvo with the Victoria is 2 salvos, so you got more than 1 chance for RNGesus to smile upon you. We take some torpedoes there from one of the DDs, does more damage to us than anything else has in this game. I don't know if it was the split or the other one. We're not quite able to take him out, but we do increase our damage done from, I think, 122 when we cut to 132 now. Split goes down, we get a fist. There's still Udachi lurking around. Here he is, coming out of the smoke screen 6 kilometers away. And now we can get all the guns on target with this salvo. Pretty decent damage, high caliber. Udachi goes down. That's effectively the end of this battle. 136,000 damage done. Not exactly the craziest total you've ever seen, no doubt, but the speed at which we got the damage and the overall effectiveness of it, I don't know how you can argue with it. 7 citadels, 2 kills, 3 fists. Not a bad result by any stretch of the imagination. This next battle here is going to be a little bit more high damage when all is said and done, although the result isn't going to be quite as nice for the blue team. It's a little bit of a competitive battle, though, I would say. And I think our initial salvo here is going to be against a battleship, and it's going to do like 30,000 damage. Now, I think the main reason people are saying Victoria is bad, there's things to do with the armor, of course. It is effectively an Italian battleship, a Vittorio Veneto. It is heavily armored, but I think some of that heavy armor and the flatness of the angles of it does make it eat some pretty hefty pens sometimes and maybe not feel as tanky as you'd want. Also, it's got that step thing on the back of the ship, which is effectively like a third broadside. It's a good shell catcher that can arm a lot of shells. There, by the way, another example of damage being good. 2 citadels in the span of that salvo, 33,000. Don't worry, there's going to be more to come in this game. But anyway, if you take a look at the Victoria's specs page, and also I should probably show you my commander build. It is the Spanish battleship commander Jose Fernandez y Nino, and we need to talk about him a little bit. We'll pause for this shot here against the Frederick de Grossa before I show you the build. See what the results are. 33,000 damage after that salvo turns into 48,000 damage, pretty good. Anyway, here's the build with the module selection. As you can see, this guy's got flammable cannoneer on him. We have his inspiration set for total stealth using Kondo and Swirsky. Nothing really specking into the accuracy aside from flammable cannoneer and aiming systems mod 1. Anyway, with this build on the ship, using gyrating drill bits, by the way, in the second row, the maximum AP shell damage is 9,720, which is by far the lowest for any battleship with 381mm guns, I think, anywhere in the game. And Victoria does have 381mm or 15-inch guns. So if you look at that number and the size of the guns, you're like 9,000 base, not great. 9,720 with gyrating drill bits giving you the 10% bonus to AP damage. Also probably not great. But one thing you have to keep in mind is that effectively every single salvo you shoot with the Victoria is not one salvo, but 2. The thing has the ready rack gimmick, so every time the guns are fully reloaded, and by the way, the full reload for both salvos in the ready rack with this build, using just, I think, the reload mod and the skill in Jose's third row called On Second Thought, using just those 2 skills, the reload time for both salvos in the ready rack is 31.4 seconds, just a little over 30. Not exactly that far off most battleships at the tier, which have around a 30-second reload. Some of them have a little bit lower, some of them are right there. This is pretty much in line with all of that, but you get 2 salvos every time, which means that the theoretical alpha on this ship for the AP, and by alpha, I mean we take the 18 guns, we multiply 18 by the single shell AP alpha of 9,720, we get 174,960. Now that's only possible, of course, if literally all 18 shells hit the citadel and do their maximum damage, which is never going to happen. And also, because the reload is 31.4 seconds, effectively every 60 seconds, the most damage we could theoretically do is that 174,960. If the reload were a little bit longer, and let's say we could fire twice in 60 seconds, then the theoretical DPM of this thing would be 349,920 with the AP. It's not quite there, but the 174,000, I think that's quite a lot, especially if we put it into perspective and compare it alongside a ship with the same size guns, the Italian Tier 8 battleship Lepanto. Now, Lepanto has more guns, of course, than the Victoria does. It has 12 381mm guns, but the single shell AP Alpha on Lepanto is 11,000. Little bit more than the base 9,000 on Victoria. And yet, if you take the 12 guns times the 11,000 damage, what you get is a theoretical alpha strike of 132,000 per salvo, well below the Victoria's 174,960. The only thing Lepanto maybe has going for it is I've got the reload on that thing at 30.1 seconds. So effectively, it can fire twice every minute, which means the theoretical DPM is closer to 264,000. And remember, Victoria can't fire twice every minute, but if it could, then its theoretical DPM would be at 349,000. So I fail to see with these numbers, even if you observe that each individual shell does a maximum of only 9,000 base on Victoria, I fail to see how that's bad when you take into account the rest of the context. The fact that this thing is effectively shooting twice every time you reload it. The damage, to me, seems pretty good. I don't think you can just merely observe the fact that the AP shell damage on the Victoria's specs page says 9,000 and then stop your thinking there. There's more to it than just that. And also, I've heard that the accuracy on the Victoria is not all that great. Keep in mind, I don't have this thing built for accuracy in any way. I've got Kondo and Swirsky as the two inspirations for the commander. That's double concealment. And again, the only accuracy I've got spec'd into it is Aiming Systems Mod 1, which gives you 7% better dispersion, and then Flammable Cannoneer. Although on top of that, Jose Ferrandiz y Nino himself, the commander, does have some accuracy stuff going for him. His base trait is called Architect of the Fleet. I've got him fully maxed at rank 16 Legendary 4, so his base trait reduces battleship dispersion by 2.5% and buffs Sigma or shell grouping by 2.5%. So there's a little bit of accuracy from the base trait. And if you wanted to, instead of using Master Mechanic in the 4th row, you could use one of his other skills, the special one called Ready to Rack, which obviously buffs the Ready Rack parameters a little bit, but also buffs the dispersion by 5%. So there's options here to get better accuracy. But even with this build, lightly spec'd into accuracy as it is, we've got a Sigma value of 2.15, and while the dispersion numbers are maybe not that great compared to other battleships, we do see some shotgun dispersion from time to time. As you can see from this battle, we've had no problem dealing pretty catastrophic amounts of damage to the enemy team. We've got the high caliber metal, we've hit 7 citadels, we're at 167,000, and I think there's a little bit more damage to squeeze out of this too before we end up going, unfortunately, down. So the accuracy I don't find to be that big of a problem on this thing, even with my build, where I specifically avoid doing things like putting accuracy inspirations on Jose. I mean, you could use Cunningham, you could use Iachino, maybe Scharnhorst, Azerlane Scharnhorst that is, if you have her, and you could spec into the accuracy. But I think the main thing you should be thinking about is where do you put your ship on the map in order to access the broadsides. That's the main thing I think about whenever I'm driving a battleship around, and mostly the reason I build so heavily into concealment. This 12.3 kilometers that we have with the concealment mod and the Kondo and Swirsky inspirations, that means we have a lot more leeway about where we sail our ship around the map. We can get closer to the action without being spotted and focused. We can get away easier. I think it just opens up a world of possibilities for placing your ship in the right place to take advantage of the enemy broadsides, particularly since it doesn't seem to be a widespread strategy in the community to adopt my philosophy and focus more on positioning your battleship by building it for a little bit more stealth and opening up some leeway in your positioning. You outspot pretty much every battleship you come across, and I just think it's helpful for reasons that I've already explained in great detail in previous videos, so I don't think we need to get too much more into them here. I just mostly wanted to address the damage output of Victoria, and that has to do with the AP shell damage and the accuracy more than anything else. I don't find the damage to be lacking, and I would say that we cannot be basing our evaluations of ships off one single number from the specs page. It's just not enough to observe 9,000 is lower than, say, Lepanto's 11,000, or whatever the single shell AP alpha is of any other battleship at the tier. 9,000 is certainly lower than it. But that ignores the context of the fact that even though Victoria effectively only has 9 guns, it actually doesn't. It really has 18. since every time it reloads the guns fully, it's shooting 18 shells. There's only a 2.5-second delay between the first salvo in the ready rack and the second. That's essentially instant when it comes to time in World of Warships Legends. So effectively what we have here is a battleship with the most guns in the game, 18 of them. And so of course, when it has 18 guns effectively, the alpha on the AP is going to be a little bit lower than battleships that have fewer guns. The most that any battleship has, aside from Victoria, would be the Lepanto, with 12. And we've already demonstrated that this thing, at least in terms of its theoretical DPM, is pretty comparable to Lepanto. I've given you the numbers there. The only thing I would say as we go down to the CV and lose this battle, unfortunately, is that I don't know how to really calculate the effective hitting DPM. The hitting DPM on Victoria may very well be worse than any other battleship at the tier. I don't know. I suspect it's probably not, though, because I haven't had a problem with the damage output on this thing. And I think if you got this ship and you're feeling disappointed by it because of the lack of damage output, maybe try copying my build, play around with it, see how it goes for you, because I've never thought that the damage output on this ship is lacking. And I just wanted to get those thoughts out there into the community because I see so many people saying stuff to the contrary. So even if you don't agree with me, hopefully this gave you something to at least challenge your assumptions. If not, well, it is what it is. But give the video a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.